What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to go over the grading from that 16-book modern CGC submission that I just did. I'm going to pull graders' notes where they're available, and when there aren't any, we'll still go over those books and talk about why I decided on the grade that I picked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the camera around, we'll do a nice close-up of these books, and we'll talk about how I came up with my grade estimates versus what CGC gave the book. Alright, so let's get started with this. I'm just going to take books from this submission and I'll talk about what I estimated the book at and then what CGC obviously gave the book. And if there are graders' notes, I will throw them up on the screen. So we're going to start with the first book that was in my submission because they were in alphabetical order, and that was Albedo number 4. And so this one did have graders' notes, so I'm going to throw those up on the screen. You can see it says foreign substance, center of back cover, light crease, right bottom of back cover, and spine stress lines. And so I had graded this one at an 8.5 to a 9, and they gave it an 8.5. And so if we go along the spine, you can see some of those spine stress lines. It's generally pretty clean from the front. You've got one big spine tick there, 2, maybe 3, 4, a couple. There's in that black, maybe even 3, 4, 5. So there's 5, and then 6 right here. So we've got maybe 6 spine ticks, possibly even 7, because there's quite a bit going on right here, quite a few on the front. And then when we flip the book over, they had, again, some spine stress lines. Now remember, CGC notes are not comprehensive, so they just give you a general idea. But you can see, again, you've got some spine stress lines going along. This is actually just a scuff on the case. It's not on the book itself. But we've got a few spine stress lines. There's also a little bit of color rub up here. And it is a black cover on the back, so you get some color rub. And they said that there was a light crease, the right bottom of back cover. And so that should be here. Let's see if we can find it. I don't really see it on there. Now, one thing I did notice on this one was that there was a light crease up here, right on that edge. And it was largely taken care of in pressing. You can almost just kind of see it there. A real light crease there on that edge. But then for the foreign substance, it's really tough to see. It almost might look like it's part of the costume, but there's this black stuff right here that is not actually part of the costume itself. So you can see how you get that weird reflection right there, that black. That's not part of the cover. This stuff right here, that's a light stain. And so there's also another little one right here, really tough to. Yep, so you can see how it has that different reflection there. There are these 2 stains here. And so they're small stains, but those combined with, give or take, around 7 to 10 spine ticks, that's where I got this down at a 8.5 to a 9, and they put it at the 8.5 side of it. That's that first book. All right, now the second book is this one that I showed, this Immortal She-Hulk number 1. This is the Lee Virgin variant. This is the one I thought might get a 9.6. And sorry, it's just so much reflection, it can be tough to see a little bit. But I'll show you, this was why. So there's a little bit of color rub on this staple, and a tiny bit of color rub right there on this staple. So you can see that right there. But otherwise, this is an extremely clean book. Really just 0 spine ticks. Nothing going on the back cover either. So this one can be, is pretty quick. It's a 9.8, but this is one of those that's really useful because you've got that little bit of color rub, and it shows you that 9.8s are not perfect. 9.8s can have flaws, and in this case, this is one where that flaw was a little bit of color rub, but it was within the margins to stay in a 9.8. So it's something to be aware of, that you can retain a 9.8 with small amounts of flaws. Next one we'll just jump right into is another 9.8 here. This is just the Lee variant cover. You can see this one is a 9.8 as well, and it has one spine tick right here. And so, yes, you can have one, sometimes two spine ticks with a 9/8. And it just, a lot of it comes down to how clean the bindery tears are up at the top and the bottom. Because if you have a 10-0, you have perfect cuts everywhere. That's really where, the way I look at it is you lose the 2.1s at the top and the bottom on most books, right? Up here and down here. That's your 0.1, 0.2, now you're down at the 9.8. One spine tick gets you a 9.7. And so that's why you can say sometimes you might get the 9.8, sometimes you might get the 9.6. It's in the middle. If you have two spine ticks, usually you're going to have a cleaner cut on the top or the bottom. And so you've got, again, only 2 or 3 flaws. And so, but this one, that one spine tick, again, back super clean on this book. And so 9.8. So next we're going to talk about X-Men 109. This one got a 9.4. There are no graders notes for it, so we'll just talk about why I gave it that grade. So the corners just had a tiny bit of blunting, a little bit there, a little bit up here, so that's like 2 flaws, a little bit here, 3 flaws, and then when you go along the spine, you've got 1, 2, and then there's another small one there, 3, and then see if I can get it to show up. There's one more spine tick right down here, 4. So you've got 4 spine ticks, corner blunting on like 3 of the corners, so that's like 7 flaws. That's why I had this one at a 9.294, and it got that 9.4. It was at like a 9.3. Think of it that way. It could go either way, and it got the 9.4. Okay, so next we've got Daredevil 180. This was that book that I said was a free throw-in and another some books that I bought, and I thought it looked really nice, and so I had it as a 9.6. I think largely because there were some really light indentations along the spine. It looks like they got pressed out perfectly well. So now the top and the bottom, you have the bindery tears. So the top actually looks amazing from the front, but if you flip the book over, you can see you've got a little bindery tear up there on the back, and then on the back, or on the bottom corner, you have another small bindery tear. But this spine, pressing did an incredible job on it. There is really nothing to speak of on this spine. It is a flawless spine, basically. Corners look really good. Maybe a tiny amount of blunting there. That's about it. Edges look really good. This corner looks really good. So really, this one was a solid 9.8, 9.7, especially after the pressing took care of any of those little indentations along the spine. So that's this one, 9.8. 9.8s are always pretty quick and easy. If you watch ETA Nick, he often talks about that, how the higher grades in theory are the easiest ones to grade because you can count flaws. The tough part can be that you're looking at these books before pressing, and so you've got to kind of, you have to make some guesses on what you think the pressing can get out. And so this is one of those cases where this was the 9.4. I had this one at an 8.5. I think an 8.85. Let me double check. Yeah, I had this one at an 8.85. Now the front cover is actually extremely sharp. You can see top edge, corner, spine. Looks really, really nice actually. Maybe I can't even tell if that's like a star. One of the stars on the cover are actually a flaw. But in general, extremely nice. So bottom edge looks really nice, bottom corner really nice. The flaws that I saw were these very light spine ticks on the back. And so I'll show you, they're mostly down here on the bottom. And so you can see there's a number of these tiny little, they show up best like on this side of the light with this. So you can see these tiny little color breaks along the spine. And maybe I was just being too picky when I was grading it, and I was just really counting like every tiny little speck of a color break along that spine as a flaw, and just something that maybe I was being overly aggressive on this one. And because looking at it, we're looking at it really close up. This is very zoomed in, and those are extremely small, barely color breaking. And so you can see with that, that's really those are the extent of the flaws here. There are no graders notes for this one. and it's got a 9.4. And so it looks like really it's just, they counted a couple of these little color breaks back here, but for the most part, extremely clean book. And it's one of those things, we're looking at it again. I think I was probably being a bit aggressive on it, and I can see where it got that high grade. All right, so the next one, Amazing Spider-Man 252, I had estimated a 9.2. It got a 9.2. I thought this one was really useful because there's a very specific flaw that knocked it down to this 9.2. It's in the grader's notes. I'll throw that up on the screen. You can see it says a tear with crease, left center back cover. And so with this book, the front cover is actually extremely clean. If you had just seen this in a bag, someone would probably grade this like a 9.6 from like a front cover grade. It's got a pretty big bindery tear up here, but it's not a big deal. Like I said, bindery tears are allowed. Spine is very clean. I can't remember if there's maybe one spine tick, but actually it almost, I mean, there's a couple of these, and I'll show you. There's a couple of these little, very light indentations, and you can kind of see them in the light there. Really light indentations, but they don't break color, and they really aren't counting against this book. I mean, you can barely even see them. And then you've got a little bindery tear down in the bottom there. But the thing that got this book down to a 9.2, as you can see, back cover again, generally looks very clean. There's a small amount of color rub up here. But the flaw on this book is right here. You see that right there? That tiny little tear, that's probably a 1/16 of an inch, and that little crease. I mean, you can see how small it is next to my thumb. So you have that tiny little crease, tiny tear. That is what knocked this book down to a 9.2. That's why I thought this book was going to get a 9.2. That's why it's important to know that you can have creases, you can have tears, and get in the 9s. They just have to be really small. In this case, about a 1/16 inch tear combined with a pretty small crease. I don't know what I would say that is, maybe a 1/4 inch crease, something like that, keeps you in the 9.2. And so really nice presenting book with that one tiny little flaw. And that's why you cannot front cover grade books. It doesn't matter how nice it looks from the front. There's always something, that has potential to be showing up on the back. And in this case, it's that tiny little tear with the crease knocks it down from a potential 9.6, 9.8 down to a 9.2. Okay, now we've got a few Transformers books. This is the 9.4 Direct Edition. I had estimated this one at a 9.496, got the 9.4. And again, you can see top edge, super clean. Corner, super clean. That edge, very clean. There are no grader's notes for this one. This corner, great. Everything looks really nice on this book, but we've got a little bit of spine wear on this one. I mean, the bindery cut isn't perfect up here, but then you've got one tiny color break here. 1, 2, 3. And then there's a little something going on in the spine there, maybe 4. And so, then you've got the bottom. This one's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice cut. So I'd almost say it's like between 4 and 5 flaws. That's why I had it at a 9.496. Got the 9.4. Can't complain too much. On this one, the back cover again is pretty nice. You've got a few spine ticks that break color. This one. And generally they're carried over from the front, so it's not like they get counted twice. But just a couple little spine ticks on the back there. But they generally, like I said, carry over from the front, so it's really just one spine tick. All right, so now for the newsstand 8.5. I had estimated this one at a 7.5 to an 8. And again, this one, it looks really nice as well. Really nice top edge, side, right edge. Corners look really nice. Now, when you get to the spine, there are a couple, spine ticks. You've got that guy up here. Move along the spine, you can see a few of them. That's a pretty big one right there. Another small one. But in general, the front is really pretty nice. There's a tiny color break right here. Let me see if this one had grader's notes. That did. All right. So you can see the grader's notes for this. It has small crease bottom of front cover, and that's, I believe, what it's talking about there. is this little crease on the spine. I think that's probably what that's talking about. We've got spine stress lines that I talked about, I just showed. But the big one on this book is the back cover. And you've got this crease that's about, let's say, 3/4 of an inch. And I think that is the, when I've talked about before with grading, that's like the limiting flaw on the book. You're not going to get, I thought, I was thinking it was more like an 8, 7.5 to an 8 because of that crease, but it must have been just short enough. Got itself an 8.5. Like I said, the rest of the book was very clean. Very few spine ticks. You know, again, a little bit on the back cover there. You can see a couple of those little white color breaks. For the most part, very nice book. But that crease on the back cover there, that's what knocks it down to that 8.5. Again, the reason you've got to check books, you know, on the back side of the book, the interior of the book, everything before you send them in. All right, now the 9.6. Now this one, the surprising thing with this book is that this one actually did have grader's notes. So a 9.6 grader's notes, which is almost unheard of. And the thing that they notated is actually, it's strange. It's something that doesn't impact the grade. They notated very small address, date, name stamp, top left front covers. They're talking about this. Date stamps don't affect the grade. You know, so at first I was like, well, maybe this is like a new grader, and they were like, oh, that affects the grade. And I was like, maybe it's worthwhile to send this one in to try to see if I could get that 9.8. It's the price difference. I talked about this a little bit in the video. A 9.8 of this book in a newsstand is like $4,000. A 9.6 is like $700, $800. That is a very significant gap between a 9.6 and a 9.8. And it's just, you know, but I took a close look at it afterwards just to make sure. And because I had this at a 9.4, 9.6. And there are a couple, so I can get it to show up. There are a couple little, you know, you've got the bindery tear. You've got maybe one spine tick right below it. And then there's one, I'd say, relatively good sized spine tick. It's tough to see. It's right in his eye where this crease is. It's tough to see on camera. But you can see it better on the back cover, because if you go to the back cover, this back cover hides absolutely nothing. This is what makes it, one of the things that makes it so difficult. Then there are two relatively obvious spine ticks. One that's pretty clear, this one right here. Then there's an extremely light one right here. It's hard to even make out, but it's there. Now the other thing that I did have some questions about this one. I wasn't quite sure because, and it's really hard to make out inside the case. There is a small light scratch. Yeah, you can see that right here. That's on the book. And I didn't know if that would end up having an impact on the grade, and given it got a 9.6, I gotta say it didn't. So it was a light enough scratch, just like a surface scratch, that it didn't impact the grade. I have some other books where they have much deeper type scratches on them, but that one, just being a really light surface scratch, did not seem to impact the grade on this book. So 9.6. All right, so this is the last book that has grader's notes. The rest of them don't, but like I said, we'll still go over them. This is XMen 94, a 7.0. You kind of hope at a 7.0 that it would have some grader's notes. The notes say multiple creases, breaks color, spine stress lines. And so this one, I had somebody comment that they had like a 6.0 that looked nicer than the 7.0. That's the thing, you've got to realize that you can have, it depends where your flaws are. You could have a book that looks flawless from the front. I mean, like that 8.5 Transformers 1, nearly flawless from the front, but has a crease on the back. Gets an 8.5, looks like a 9.4, 9.6. You know, so front cover appearance does not determine the grade. It's a cumulative effect of the flaws. And so with this one, I would still grade this one as a 6.5. I had estimated it as a 6.5. I'd still grade this one at a 6.5. But hey, you know, I'll take the 7. And so for me, you can see it's got, you know, the bindery flaw, but then you've got some bigger spine ticks on this one, you know, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16, then you've got a little bit of damage down here, maybe like 17, 18. Then you've got a little bit of corner damage down here. I'd say that's almost, I'd count that as like 5 flaws. So like 23. Then you've got a small crease, little small crease here. And then this little bit of like a thumb crease here. And so that's where, like, between those, I'm knocking it down probably almost like 10. So that's like 28. And then you've got another blunted corner with a little crease here. And so that's like another 5. And then, so that's 23 flaws, or 33 flaws. And then you've got this tiny little crease up here. And so that's why, like, I'm at around 35 flaws, something like that. I like to do the flaw counting. I think it works pretty well to a point. And so that's where I was at, around a 6.5. You know, they had it at a 7. Half a grade, I'm never going to complain about half a grade. You know, it is, you know, when you get to these points, you call it like it's an art instead of a science. You know, when you're just counting like 1 or 2 spine ticks, it's very easy. But when you're getting down into 20, 30, 40, 50 flaws, it's a little bit different. And you really have to look at the cumulative book as a whole. Back cover actually is very nice. No substantial flaws that really jump out. I mean, you're going to have the spine ticks that carry over. You can kind of see them. It's tough on the white, but you can see them on the dark in the wrap. But in general, back cover very nice. But that's why I gave it the 6.5. They gave it the 7.0. You know, can't argue too much about that. All right, so now these are my buddy's books. This was the X-Men 266. I graded this one at a 9.496. Again, this is actually one of the nice things about this one is this is cut really nice. A lot of times the cut goes into the uncanny at the top, or it's not square. This is square. You got the full uncanny X-Men on the top, so it's a nice looking book. This one, it's really just comes down to spine wear. Top edge, corners, right edge, bottom corner, bottom edge, all really sharp. But when you get to the spine, it just comes down to counting flaws. So if we're counting flaws, I mean, I'm trying to get this as close to the camera as possible so you can see the spine. And there's maybe a small 1 or 2 at that staple, so we'll say 2. And there's one little one right here, 3. And then there's one little one right here, 4. That bottom staple looks really clean, you know. And then you maybe take the bindery tears at the top, 5 and 6. And this one, I thought, you know, the cuts looked really pretty nice. Maybe a little bit on that one, but the bottom one looked really nice. So I had this at a 9.496. I still think that this, if this was resubmitted, I think this could get a 9.6 if it was worth the time and money and everything to do it. I don't think it really is. But again, I'm not going to complain about a half grade. I think that that's really, it's within the margin of error. And so I had this at a 9.496, got the 9.4. Because we had other ones that went on the other side of it. So sometimes you take a win, sometimes you take a loss. So then we had New Mutants 87. This is an example of one that took a win, because I had this book at a 9.92. And so you can see you've got a little bit of like an interior page tear up at the top there. Top edge looks really nice. Right edge looks nice. Yeah, bottom corner is really sharp. So then again, with these high grade books, generally what it comes down to is spine ticks. And it's just, are you a little more picky or are they being a little more picky? And I'm always really picky on the spine ticks. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed. And so we've got, let's see here. You got 1 spine tick there. Got 2 right there. Maybe a light one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so that's where for me, I had 10 very light color breaks. That's why I had it at the 9.92. They, maybe didn't interpret those as color breaks the same way I did. I mean, they are very, very small. We are very zoomed in, but I like to be aggressive on my grading like that to make sure that I'm safe or comfortable in the submission, because sometimes not submitting, it's more expensive to submit the book, depending on the grade and everything, than it's worth. And so I prefer to be a little picky, but I saw 10 light color breaks. That's why I had it at the 9.92, and they gave it the 9.4. So yeah, can't complain about that. The X-Men 266, off got a half grade lower. This one got a half grade higher than my upper end, so super happy. Right. Next one is Saga #1. This is the one I talked about that just takes a press really well. If you watch channels like Erod 212, he always talks about this book, and he has mentioned that as well on how well this book presses. And this isn't, this is one where you can see, and it's probably going to be really tough on camera. There are these really light little defects on the cover. You can see them there, and that's why I had this at a 9.0 to a 9.6, because I wasn't sure how hard they were going to hit it for those tiny little defects. And it seems that in this case, they aren't. It's hard to say color breaking with a white cover, but they aren't. You can tell they aren't color breaking. They're just almost like little bends in the book, and there's maybe 4, 5, 6 of them that are still remaining. And so you might say 9.4, 9.2, but they didn't punish the book nearly as much as like a more strict like color break for those. And so got the 9.6. So just another one of these books that it's good to see flaws like that and see what the book can get with flaws like that, because maybe that would hold you back from submitting this. But I know that with this book, you can tend to get better grades with that type of flaw than you might get with, say, a black cover that has that type of flaw. And so this one got the 9.6. Right, then we've got Y the Last Man #1. I had this one at a 9.0 to a 9.2. So again, we've got, it's going to come down to spine. Top edge, super clean. Corner, clean. Right edge, looks great. Bottom corner, looks great. Remember I said these were his reader copies, which is why it's so impressive that these books managed to stay in that this high of a grade. And then now we're going to go along the spine. And again, it's a white spine. Could be a little difficult to see the flaws. Really don't see much on the front cover there. There's a little bit almost of like dirt or something still on there. The back cover though, that's a different story. Back cover is black. This does not hide anything. And so if we go along this back cover, got 1, maybe 2, 3, 4, this little indents, kind of 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're kind of just counting those. And so 8 spine ticks on the back gives it the 9.2. You can see like those might be the same type of spine ticks that are on that Saga 1, but it's on a white cover. On this side looks amazing, but on that book it's white all around, and so you don't have those popping up. But on this one you see them on the back cover. Gets the 9.2. All right, and now down to the final book. This was the one that was the one downside disappointment, unfortunately, because it's a pricey book. But the reality is, in the 9.2 to 9.6 grade, book sells for almost the exact same price. I think I looked up pricing, and like a 9.2 was like $1,050, and a 9.6 was like $1,150. Like $100. But then you get the 9.8, and it's $3,000. You get that massive jump from the 9.8, but once you get below that, people just want the book. And there's kind of like a baseline value that's around $1,000 for this book in almost any grade. So with this one, I had this one at a 9.4, 9.6. And, it looks really clean. You've got, again, really clean edges, really clean corners. This is a book you always have to get pressed because it came in a poly bag, and there's often a crease on the cover from that poly bag, but it can be pressed out. But if you don't, you're going to get a super low grade. And then, so here's that one spine tick I was talking about. You've got this spine tick right here, and it's on the back cover too. You've got that same spine tick carried over here. Now the thing that I missed, I've realized now, I think I thought this was part of the cover, part of the design on the cover, this streak here. And I have now, I've checked against other books. I don't do modern books very often. I'm not super familiar with this book. And so, everything else really looks very nice on this spine. But what it comes down to is there was this color rub, this streak or scratch on the back cover. And so I would say that, you know, it had that one spine tick basically, and then I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's part of the cover or not. But that one, you know, big color breaking spine tick, maybe a small one at this staple here, but then it had this long scratch on the back cover. And unfortunately, that is what I didn't realize was not part of the cover, and that's why it got the 9.2. I'm happy it didn't hit it more than that. But like we've seen, like color rub, you can get away with a fair amount. It's hard to even call that color rub though. It's more like a scratch. It's like a large scuff on the back. That is definitely not on the case. It is on the book. But yeah, 9.2 with this one. Still, like I said, if you're going to be between, and you know, I had it at 9.496. If you're going to be down in that range anyway, it doesn't make a huge difference on price. But the only way you really get that big bump is up at the 9.8. But yeah, that was what I missed on that book. I know for the future that there's definitely not a line that's there on this one as part of the back. But yeah, so that is all the books. Hope you found this useful. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. Maybe got some insight into my grading process, why CGC gave the grades that they did to these books. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.